I am joined today by the main man, founder of DNA Health and Wellness, Dr. Nas. I was sick maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year, and ever since I've seen you, not once.
So can I retire now?
So you've given me back a month, really, 4 weeks back of my life this year.
I kind of realised that the system was broken. An event like COVID changed people's kind of perception of health.
The reduction in the amount of people, younger people that are drinking, because they're so aware of how it affects them. What's the theory behind not medicating someone or trying to avoid that?
You've got high blood pressure, taking medication. You've got high cholesterol, taking medication. No one's actually taking a step back and asking themselves the question, why do I have high blood pressure? I mean, there were studies into Ozempic, and the studies that led to the FDA approval for it for weight loss, these groups of people for a year after they'd finished the medication, most of them rebounded.
They say stress can kill. Believe that?
100%.
Welcome back to Taking Care of Business. This is a really, really exciting episode and actually something that's been quite close to my heart. I am joined today by the main man, the owner, the founder of DNA Health and Wellness, Dr. Nas. How are you, buddy?
Great, mate.
You okay?
Thanks for having me, yeah.
Well, look, bit of background to Dr. Nas. So he runs the DNA Health Clinic, and I went to go and see him probably nearly 9-10 months ago now, start of this year. He was recommended to me from a friend of mine, Cyrus, who I train with, and went to go do some blood works and basically figured out, in my life, where I am at the minute and weight loss, could you help me and give me a bit of an edge to performing? We went there and done some bloods and some health. You gave me all the bits and pieces that where I was at the moment. And I said to you at the time, Dr. Nas, that typically I was sick with 2 young kids, bring all the bugs back from nurseries. I was sick maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 times a year. And ever since I've seen you, not once. So thank you for that.
Pleasure. So can I retire now?
Well, listen, maybe if you do many more people, you can do that. But no, honestly, I'm a believer in your magic and some of the things that you do. And it's interesting when we talk about today, your background and what you believe in and what you don't believe in, and how in this Taking Care of Business episode, how your health can actually give you a huge edge in your performance in work and in your family life as well. And I've seen that. Like I say, you've given me back a month, really, 4 weeks back of my life this year. I probably would have lost due to being ill and being in bed. So really, really interesting. Tell us firstly a little bit about your business, when you set up, your background also, and who's involved in it, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, no, good question. So I started off as a GP in the UK, in the north, Manchester. And it wasn't long into being a GP that I kind of realized that the system was broken. And that realization actually came a lot from wanting to optimize my own health. I was into training, sport, had more time on my hands than I do now. And then you gradually realize that when it comes to using simple things like lifestyle, supplementation, we had no formal training whatsoever. And if anything, most of the advice that we were giving to people, if we were giving any lifestyle advice, was wrong. And then so like anything, you kind of end up going down a rabbit hole. And I found something called functional medicine, which we can talk about after. And realized that, if I want to practice in that way, which is kind of using lifestyle as the cornerstone, I need to get out of that system. I mean, the NHS, for those that don't know, is not really set up for a health optimization approach. It's more kind of dealing with sick kind of care. And so that ended up in me coming out to Abu Dhabi actually at the time, 10 years ago. And they often say, don't they, that you can have a right idea, but you can be too soon or it's too early.
Yeah, timing's important.
And I just think the timing was probably a bit too early for Abu Dhabi at that moment in time. And I came across my current sort of co-founder and partner, Sho, who's not a doctor. He's an ex-banker, ran companies and family offices. And, it was just serendipitous. He also fell into sort of an interest in lifestyle medicine and preventative health, because he had his own health issues, as a lot of bankers do. And he turned it around and it became a passion for him. And we joined forces. And DNA existed in name prior to 2018, but we took it over, set up a new company, and it's been great ever since.
World's changed, right? So I was talking to someone earlier today about me being young, working out then, and awareness of alcohol and food, and certainly in the last 5 years, maybe more, taught the information and the education of how things can affect you or performance, whether it's sleep, whether it's never been more than ever, right? And I think there's a statistic about young people, the reduction in the amount of younger people that are drinking because they're so aware of how it affects them. I guess that's been a driver, or it's a lead into the business with people being more aware now. I have read somewhere, or maybe I've seen it somewhere, where there's a theory of being able to extend your lifespan potentially. Like Joe Rogan had seen, who's the guy? Gary Brecker.
Yeah.
Some similarities, right, with what Gary Brecker does in terms of optimizing and really what you guys do.
Absolutely. And there's definitely been a number of forces at play. I think, as you said, there's a lot of information out there, particularly in podcast format, that's very accessible to people. I think also, an event like COVID changed people's kind of perception of health. It wasn't good enough, not necessarily just not being sick. People wanted to they were demanding being optimized.
Yeah.
And actually, what's interesting is you've seen, the younger generation coming through now who, you look at, say, university is very different to kind of probably how we went to university and socialized. The priority is a lot more on health, where it wasn't even on the radar back then. But even successful people and older people now, a badge of their success is not their house or their boat or their car. It's actually become their health status. And I mean, you'll see it. It forms definitely a sort of big part of the sort of dinner table or social conversation. So it's just a priority for people now, and so that has been a driver to our clinics, because we're almost the antithesis of the regular health system. As I kind of highlighted before, it's not just restricted to something like the public system, like the NHS. Even in the sort of private system, which particularly here is very much a US approach, is very costly and not particularly that effective when it comes to the outcomes, and certainly not effective when it comes to preventative health. So at the same time, there's a level of distrust of the health system, or certainly people are realizing the limitations of the regular health system. It's great when I'm really sick, but actually if I want to stay well, I need a different approach.
So you're getting ahead of the problem before we react to it, because the issue with the NHS is capacity, and sometimes it's too late sometimes to be able to deal with the problem. That you were back home, I guess you identified issues with the system back home, and really it could be done better or different elsewhere, right?
Exactly. I think you're trying to look at kind of early warning signs a lot earlier on, and it's not just the approach in general. It's a sort of testing as well.
Yeah.
That's different, and also, I think there's just absolutely no focus on the root cause of disease in a traditional approach. It's a kind of a case of, you've got high blood pressure, take a medication. You've got high cholesterol, take a medication. No one's actually taking a step back and asking themselves the question, why do I have high blood pressure? Why do I have high cholesterol? In the cases that people are asking that question, often the advice is incorrect.
Okay. It's really interesting, because when I met you, my expectation was you were going to medicate me in some form, give me a prescription, some drugs to say, take this and you'll be okay, sort of thing. And actually you were very anti that. It was, these are the things that are herbal or some form, take this and, have good habits and things should improve. What's the theory behind not medicating someone or trying to avoid that?
I think it comes down to the fact that if you look at modern day disease, the issues that people are suffering with, so it's obesity, it's cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance and all the consequences of insulin resistance, and even cancer and Alzheimer's, the root of these issues is lifestyle. And so if lifestyle is causing it, then you can use lifestyle to reverse it. Now, I'm not anti-medication. I prescribe medication, but I'm a little bit more, I think, analytical or very specific about when I prescribe medication. And you hear the term sort of personalized medicine. I think that's what it is, rather than using a kind of population approach of, say, you're a male, you're over 50, you need to go on a statin to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease. It's a bit more, what is this individual person's risk? I'm going to do more detailed assessment around his history, but also around the analytics that we're doing, and then making a more informed decision on a personal level.
Why do people trust you, though? Because obviously I was introduced through a friend who had said really good things. I've looked at your social media and, you've got, some high-profile followings, or people have visited you to optimize their health. Why do you think it is that people have said, I'm going to put my health in your hands to optimize me? It's a big thing, right?
Yeah, I think there's a number of forces at play, and it's probably the same for any business. You mentioned Instagram. I mean, Instagram has become the shop window. It's almost like that's the first thing people check to kind of validate you, which is a good thing on the one hand, but not necessarily always representative of how good someone can be. There's some people who are social media shy. Doesn't mean that they're not a good physician.
Very true.
I think we're lucky because as a company, we've been around since 2018. Dubai is notorious for having a lot of clinics, and a lot of clinics now are coming online in the last couple of years, focusing on lifestyle medicine, longevity. But it's a lot more difficult now because of the competition, but also they don't have the legacy, or they've not built the brand. We were almost like a first mover, so we have that brand value. Plus, because of the number of patients who've been through the doors, a lot of it comes through word of mouth. Case in point with you, with yourself, and also it becomes a marketing game. So I think we've we feel got all three areas covered. I mean, you can always improve,
Definitely.
But I mean, our product is also, you can consider it a lifestyle product. It's aspirational to a degree. It needs to be marketed like a fashion product, but
it's now in a weird way, being into your health is actually more of a cool thing to do, right? It's more, it's more acceptable. You're less likely to have peer pressure of not drinking now than you would have done maybe 5 years ago, because the world is a little bit different. The world is, when you people watch, you see what people are wearing on their wrists or their fingers. Most of the time, someone is wearing some form of fitness-related thing because they're conscious. And maybe like COVID was the perfect storm for you to kind of springboard their business even further, to get people even more. I don't know. I think people were scared a lot with what happened during that period, so maybe this is like a prevention thing as well. But something did strike me in some of the notes. You said 6 out of 10 deaths are preventable. That's massive.
Yeah.
Why?
It comes back to that same point. I mean, if you look at what people were dying from, 100 years ago, it was mainly infectious diseases, but then antibiotics came along, and then, we followed a kind of standard American diet. People became less mobile, weren't exercising as much, and then we started to develop a lot more of the lifestyle diseases, from dementia, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. So the fact that these issues are caused by lifestyle means that they are ultimately preventable. I think for a lot of people, it's just there aren't enough doctors or healthcare providers or whoever it may be, lifestyle advisors, who are actually giving people the correct information. So it's funny, you see a lot of the investment going into kind of medical tech and health tech, which for me, I think is missing the point, because, okay, this will help facilitate physicians or the healthcare system, but you still need doctors at the grassroots who are providing people with the service.
So my mum, who's 63, stepfather's 70, series of different health issues. I mean, as you get older, you probably would expect to get some issues, but cholesterol and different bits and pieces. And I've been really persistent on them taking up exercise, being more active, moving more, which they're doing, which is great. Is exercise and a good diet enough to prevent disease?
This is probably one of the most common questions I get asked, and they are, of course, definitely a huge part of it. But I think these are usually the two bandwagons that people jump on because they're kind of the obvious ones and most relatable. And I guess it's kind of binary to some people with exercise. They just need to kind of exercise more. Everyone has an opinion on nutrition. But I think a lot of people, whilst the tide is changing, still don't give things like stress or sleep the pedestal that it deserves. And I actually would go as far as to say that sleep underpins everything else, because we all know on a personal level, when we're underslept, we have no motivation or energy to exercise. We crave the wrong foods. We're lower in mood. We don't work as well in our business or working day, and then it just snowballs from there. Whereas I think if you're well slept, you have a lot more leverage with the type of nutrition and level of exercise that you're doing. I think that's probably a simple way of looking at it, but I think the idea is to just try and portray, I think, how important stress and sleep is.
Can lack of sleep, is there signs or medical evidence to suggest lack of sleep can cause, bad things to happen in health, related to health?
100%.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any chronic disease or cause of premature mortality that hasn't been linked to a sleep deprivation. And we need to be clear. I think if you ask the average person what is a kind of deprived night of sleep, most people would probably think, like 3, 4, maybe 5 hours. Anything kind of sub 6, 7 hours is considered sleep deprived.
Wow.
Which I think we all, or most of us to some degree, will experience not too infrequently. I mean, even it's been shown that just one night's bad sleep, for example, reduces your what's called natural killer T cells, so a big part of fighting infection and protecting you against cancer, by I think around about 30-40%.
Wow. And I did see somewhere, maybe Stephen Bartlett podcast actually, where one night of disturbed sleep or lack of sleep, where you've had significant interruption, can take you up to potentially 2 weeks to kind of be in parity with that, whether you're making 20-minute, half-an-hour gains every night to recover that 3 hours sleep, which is
they call it sleep debt. And in fact, actually, in some countries every year there is a social experiment. They change the clocks, and there is actually, when you're losing an hour of daylight, you actually see a jump in suicides, heart attacks. These stats are real.
Wow. So when I came to your clinic, I've seen good mixture of men and women. What's the difference you've seen with health? I've encouraged my wife to come and see you, by the way, in January with me. What differences do you see between men and women, and whether it's differences with their health and how things can impact them?
I mean, listen, I think there's definitely a predisposition or sex predisposition for certain sort of conditions. I think in terms of when it comes to what we see in the clinic, I mean, weight loss is always going to be a big one. And I would say that whilst I think men suffer with issues with their weight as much as women do, I think women are probably have a lower threshold to come and seek assistance. Whereas guys, I think, probably generally think to themselves, maybe they can try and sort the problem out themselves or present later on. Yeah. So I definitely see a leaning towards women when it comes to something like weight loss. There are certain kind of autoimmune conditions that we see more of in women. So, thyroid disease.
Yeah, my wife went to see someone about her thyroid. All of a sudden, weight dropped. Yeah. Wild. Just one small change can make a big difference.
Yeah, game changing. Even, I mean, higher rates of Alzheimer's in women. I mean, it's not something that we're seeing as much of in this population because it's still a relatively young population.
Yeah.
But there's definitely people who are putting steps in place to use lifestyle to try and control Alzheimer's risk. And of course, I mean, it's well documented that women do live longer than men. I don't think it's clearly known why. I mean, there's obviously the suggestion that maybe estrogen has a protective effect, or conversely, testosterone may be driving certain disease, or maybe women, are less, take less risks, difference in cortisol levels. I don't think the evidence has really come out yet. But
so what you're telling me is in 100 years we'll all be injecting estrogen to try and live longer.
It's funny you say that. I mean, there is a derivative of estrogen that has been shown, not in human studies, but in mice studies, to extend lifespan. But watch this space.
Okay. You define relentless obsession of human function. What do you mean by that? Define what human function is. What is it?
I think it's a general sort of all-encompassing term that covers, optimizing your physical, your cognitive, your emotional, and social health.
Okay.
I think if you look at, if you divide our life into 3 segments, you've got children who are developing all those skills, and then, someone like ourselves now who are at a point in our lives where you're trying to optimize those functions to balance a kind of work life. And then, later on in life, you're trying to maintain an independence. And I think maintaining the functionality of those different pillars is key to maintaining longevity when you get old. You see it. I mean, there's no good being in good physical health if you don't have any social connections or you're socially isolated, and vice versa. I mean, you can be in great mental health and have, all your cognition, but if you can't get yourself up from a seat, then there's huge physical limitation and dependency on other people. So I think it's just highlighting the importance of optimizing all those pillars, which will hopefully lead to greater longevity. Mental
health, let's call it maybe, I want to be naive here, but let's call it the last 5, maybe 10 years. There's now a label, there's more people that are suffering in different forms and ways. How is that linked to physical activity or optimization? Do you see any links there with how people are mentally?
I think the big one we see is stress, and it's funny with stress because again it's something we all acknowledge is detrimental to our health, but I don't think people believe it to be as relevant as, say, coming back to the nutrition and exercise issue. I think there's a number of forces at play there. I think the health profession doesn't really acknowledge it. There isn't a really easy way to quantify it. So we have certain analytics, but there is difficulties in the sensitivity and specificity of them. And it's ultimately a qualitative assessment. You can tell from someone's history whether there's stress. But it's difficult. If I'm sat across the table from you and I tell you you're stressed, you may kind of acknowledge it, but it's kind of like, well, okay, fine, but it is what it is. I have stress. I can't do anything about it. I think there's also that perception on the patient side. And it's often difficult to make them realize also, the impact of it and what the steps that they can put in place. Because telling someone to, meditate or take an ice bath or go for a walk in nature is not as accessible or as easy for them to maybe visualize or put into practice as just telling them to change something with their diet. So stress has a massive impact, and we see it in a number of symptoms and signs. I mean, if you look at you think about your stress response, your fight or flight response, it was only meant to be activated for a few seconds or minutes. And those feelings that we all experience, hyper awareness, your immune system's mobilized, your heart rate's going to pump blood around the system. That's led to our survival today as a species and for any species. But if those systems are activated for a chronic period of time, what's good for you in the short term becomes detrimental to your health. You get higher blood pressure, you get dysregulation of your mood, the immune system doesn't function as well. You start compartmentalizing energy different. You'll burn muscle in favor of storing fat as a long-term energy reserve. So the devil's in the dose. What's good for you in the short term becomes your detriment in the longer. And I think that's something that we're all suffering with.
How does human function, how can it affect performance by being optimized? And is there any specific use cases you've had, whether it's, let's say, someone like me or other people you've seen where you've actually seen a significant difference in their life by kind of following the treatment that you've asked of them, whether it's exercise, sleep? Is there any wins you can think of the top of your head?
Yes, I mean it's day in, day out.
Yeah.
I mean it's kind of, for us it's bread and butter.
Yeah.
And if we weren't giving people the solutions, that they wouldn't be coming through the door, and we wouldn't have built a brand. And so anything from breaking a weight loss plateau through to improving someone's mental health.
Yeah.
And we treat everyone from babies, pregnancy babies, through to old age. We have a lot of people who come with kids, and we all know now that there's a higher rate or incidence of kids with, say, behavioral disorders or neurocognitive or behavioral problems. And a lot of that's being triggered by lifestyle. I mean, our genetics haven't changed in a generation or two. Our environment has, and our
What do you think? Screen time or more device time? Or?
I think it's multifactorial. I definitely think screen time is a problem.
Yeah.
Nutrition, antibiotics, toxins, less breastfeeding. I think that there's a variety of different forces at play, and we will look at these aspects of imbalance in the child or the adult, and we see good results.
I learned some new techs. I didn't realise you went down as low as children. When I came to see you, I was surprised at the breadth of what you would do cover beyond just the typical medicine. So you also have partnerships or tie-ups, or maybe it's your own with like sound healing, and what are the bits and pieces that are connected to DNA Health? What do you do?
Yeah, so the sound healing is interesting. So we at the moment have 4 clinics in Dubai, and we set up our clinic in Allsopp Avenue, and most people will know that that's kind of the arts sort of area. And we're fortunate because part of the reason why we went into that location is because it's far bigger square footage. It's kind of almost like a warehouse setup. And a big part of that plan was because coming back to stress, we were seeing day in, day out, multiple people coming in with stress issues. Yet we didn't really know where to refer people to. We felt that space hadn't really been professionalized. So we built our own studio that delivers sound healing, breath work, meditation, yoga, and it's a very successful space. We're very broad in what we treat, but you can pretty much divide our clients into three buckets. We have our preventative health screening. We have people who will come with specific issues like autoimmune conditions or weight loss, let's say.
Yeah.
And then the third bucket now, and the growing one, is well people who are just trying to live longer and biohack.
What is the typical, when most people come to you, what's the common denominator? Is it biohacking sort of people? Because that's a huge, I want to say a fad, but you see it a lot on social media, a bit of biohacking. Is that the majority of your clients, or is it generally split?
I think that's probably the perception, but actually no. I mean, it's a growing area, but no, the main bulk of the people coming through are regular people who want to keep well, get better, or they have a specific problem. That niche of kind of longevity is popular, and we obviously naturally see a lot of people because there aren't many clinics delivering what we're delivering, or certainly aren't as established as we are. So naturally, as the demographic in Dubai has changed, we're seeing more of that come through the door. And we're also fortunate because the regulator here is very forward thinking. So we offer a lot of services that you can't get in mainland Europe or the US. And so, we've spoken before about peptide therapies, stem cells, exosomes. People, in the US have to travel offshore for these sorts of services, and so is
that because it's not FDA regulated? Is that what?
Exactly. There's FDA issues. I mean, that may now change. That you've got Kennedy coming in to run the health system. So let's see what he can do in 4 years. But I mean, the cynical side of me, and I think a lot of people, certainly in our segment, the FDA okay for its goodness. I think there's also negative aspects, and I think a lot of it's kind of covering the back of the pharmaceutical industry.
Big pharma.
Yeah.
What are just indulge me? Give me some one of the most frustrating things or annoying things you hear when it comes to common medical advice. You just think, no, that's just not the case. What's something you come across? You think no.
I think if you can imagine, a lot of the people who come to us, particularly with a problem, have already been through the regular health system and kind of left empty-handed or still scratching their head. And I think, one part of it that really bugs me is that if you look at the health system as it is now, there's very much this attitude that we're all knowing and it's all, what we offer is all encompassing. And so a general theme is that you'll have someone who goes to see their physician or multiple physicians, and they do all these tests and they're told that there's nothing wrong, yet they still feel the way that they're feeling. It's not in their head. there are significant blind spots. There is a huge amounts about health that we don't know yet, and that just is not acknowledged. I mean, even in what we do, we are more advanced in our testing, but I fully know my limitations of what I can do and what our testing can do, and I think there's going to be significant leaps in the future in the sort of data that we're assimilating and the application of AI and the outcomes we're going to be able to achieve. So I think it's just that attitude from the regular system, but also people being told that lifestyle has no impact on certain diseases when clearly, it does. It may not be in a double-blind randomized control trial, but there's clear mechanistic understanding that it does. And I think, absence of evidence doesn't mean evidence of absence. And I think that whole mindset needs to change. I think if you want to pick a specific issue, I think, diet is usually the one where there's a lot of tribal, almost sort of religious level beliefs. And I think people look at diet in the wrong way. I think people speak in absolutes. So you'll obviously on one end of the spectrum have your pro-carnivore, and then on the other end of the spectrum you'll have your vegan followers. And both of them will be arguing that theirs is a better diet. Well, ultimately it comes down to the fact that there isn't one type of dietary plan. It's what suits that individual. Yeah. Whether it's genetic, whether it's because there's another issue in their lifestyle at the moment in time, or whether they have a certain chronic disease. So I think it comes back to the whole, we have to personalize the advice to people, not speaking in absolutes as if this is right, this is wrong.
Tell me the most interesting fact about a human body part that you've come across in your time that might surprise us.
I think
or the human body
one thing
as
that I found interesting, I mean, if you look at sort of genomics, so if you look at the human genome, depending on the source, you read that it's anywhere between 21,000 genes in the human genome. If you look at a wheat genome, so a grain, there's anywhere around about, I think, 125,000 genes. So there's a factor of 5x more genes in a wheat than there is in a human being. And then it makes you think, well, so why is that the case? Well, then if you look at, say, the microbiome has anywhere upwards of around about 3 million genes in its genome. And what I find really interesting is that we're at this very early stage of really starting to understand how important our microbiome is, and this kind of organ that we're living symbiotically in, that we're outsourcing a lot of our metabolism to. And I think this is an area that's going to continue to grow. I mean, in a very short space of time, we've gone from just thinking that our gut was involved in digesting our food and getting rid of waste. We're slowly evolving and realizing that it's key to forming our brain, our immune system, our hormones, and
I think it's connected to mental health as well, right? In terms of how you feel, that's what I've read anyway. Okay, so if you were to give people one healthy habit to change or improve their life that could help potentially, I know things individualized, to longevity, what would it be with the one thing?
I think not covering the sort of obvious common stuff. I think people underestimate the power of circadian rhythm, so your day-night rhythm. A lot of our hormones and metabolism are linked to circadian rhythm, and the issue we have is we've turned it upside down. So we're indoors a lot during the daytime and not getting real sunlight exposure, and then at nighttime when it's meant to be dark, we're surrounded by fake light.
Yeah.
And so I think a simple thing that we could all do is just going outside during the daytime and just allowing that sunlight to hit our skin and the back of our eyes. And then conversely at nighttime, I mean, a lot of people now are doing it, but you'll see obviously on your phone, on your computer, you can get light filters. People often now will wear blue blocker glasses.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised what impact that has on also sleep as well.
What's your rule with it? Because when you told me a plan, one of the things on there was blue light glasses. What's your evening schedule? What do you do?
Yeah, so I practice what I preach when it comes to that. Yeah. So, because I'm very sensitive to it. So sometimes, if I have a busy day where I'm seeing a lot of patients and I'm left over with a lot of admin work, the only time that I can do it is on my laptop in the evening. And actually, one of the first things that I do as soon as the kids are in bed, I'll put on my blue blocker glasses. It's almost become a normality. And alongside the filters on the computer screen, because on days where I don't do that, I do notice a massive change in my sleep quality. Or say in the middle of the night, if I'm restless and not sleeping, and I've just maybe picked up my phone and looked at emails, again, I feel it in the morning. Yeah. It's almost like a hangover effect.
Yeah. You have a lot of CEOs come to see you amongst lots of different people from different industries, but you see a lot of industry leaders come there, and stress is a huge part of running a business. They say stress can kill. Do you believe that?
100%. I think it's the epidemic of the 21st century. And people are realizing it. So now, back to your point, that we're using a lot more self-quantification and methods of monitoring kind of sleep and stress and things like heart rate variability, pulse rate, respiratory rate. People are becoming a lot more in tune with it. And I think it's becoming more prominent, but also I think it still needs to be given a bit more of a kick from the practitioner side as well. I mean, I'm sure you have personal experience in your health journey that, again, you always knew that stress was an issue, but you probably didn't realize how much it was impacting your health. I don't know whether you can sort of vouch for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, so I was trying to lose weight a year ago, got to a very stubborn part of my experience and found it very difficult. Went to come see Dr. Nas, and there was a few things that we changed there, but I felt like stress for me was a bit of a weight, like holding me back. So certain things that I've introduced into my routine, for example, I go to sleep a lot earlier than I would have done a year ago. So rather than watching them 1 or 2 episodes on Netflix, I'll knock that on the head now, and maybe by 9:30 or 9 o'clock, I probably might be asleep. Whereas I might have been up till 10, 11, maybe watching rubbish that probably don't really make a difference in my life. I wear my blue blockers. In the morning, I ensure I always go out for a walk or work out in sunlight, because I'm in an office for a lot of the day. And these small little tweaks have actually made me relax a little bit more, making sure that I'm spending time with my kids in the evening rather than answering my phone and doing pointless emails where they can be dealt with in the morning. These little things for me have actually made quite a big difference to how I handle my work and the following day and the following week. So yes, it's very, very interesting.
And I think a lot of what you've done, it's not like your stress is less than it was. Your company's growing, you've got more employees, more issues, but your stress resilience and the way that you handle stress has changed.
Definitely. Can chronic stress manifest in the body? Can it stay with you for a long period? And by doing that, is there evidence to suggest that it can lead to chronic illness?
I think a lot of the studies are, like when it comes to lifestyle, are observational. So we don't necessarily say have the causal links, but I think if you look at the mechanisms back to that kind of that kind of fight or flight response, it's well documented that we know that hormones become imbalanced, the immune system's imbalanced, our mental health changes. We know all these things happen. Gut issues kick in. So I don't think, again, that there's any chronic disease that isn't linked in some way to stress.
Yeah.
And that's both, again, mental and physical.
What's the most emerging trend you've seen coming out regards to health in general that excites you? So I don't know, could it be devices? Could it be medicine? What is it you think, wow, this could really make a big difference in longevity and health in general?
Yeah, I think if we divide it, you commonly hear people dividing sort of health into kind of health span and lifespan. So health span is how long you're healthy during the length of your life, which is your lifespan. I can tell you right now that an area that's very popular is the use of peptides.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, I mean, peptides are naturally occurring signaling molecules in the body which have been synthesized that mimic the same effects. And you can have peptides that improve lean muscle mass, peptides for immunity, skin, hair, the list goes on. These are becoming a lot more, I think, on people's radar. Again, things like podcasts or big names in the longevity field.
But they're not commonly peptides specifically we're talking about now, they're not commonly discussed in countries, let's say, like the US or the UK, right?
Exactly, and this comes, well, they're discussed on in the field and on podcasts.
But prescribed in terms of this is what you should be taking.
And this comes back to, again, a regulatory issue and the FDA. I mean, the funny thing is, I mean, you have peptides that are pharmaceutically branded. So, we haven't spoken about the weight loss injections like Mounjaro, Ozempic. These are peptides that have been pharmaceutically.
What's your thoughts? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What do you think on this?
Again, very personalized. I don't have a blanket approach. What I would say is that I've definitely transitioned from being, very negative about them to sort of maybe being agnostic. And now I'm pro, but again, in very specific patients and under specific circumstances.
So let's say someone like me.
Well, I mean, not divulging your medical information,
course, yeah.
but no, I mean, I think you've demonstrated that you can turn it around with lifestyle and thinking back to your results. I don't think it would have been the right answer for you, given what was out of balance.
Okay.
But there's no doubt that it's useful for some people, but there are pitfalls, and you're seeing that come out in the media now. I mean, there can be too much of a good thing. If your body's becoming dependent on it over a long period of time, it can backfire. And the studies showed it. I mean, there were studies into Ozempic, and the studies that led to the FDA approval for it for weight loss showed that when you followed up these groups of people for a year after they'd finished the medication, most of them rebounded.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. There was a program on Netflix, and I've become very distrusting of what you read and see online, and certainly in the media, about Ozempic and kind of how it impacted people in lots of different ways, and not all, unfortunately, positive.
Well, and I think the core issue here is the fact that most people don't, even the professionals, don't really understand weight loss properly. And, I think we're a very established clinic at dealing with weight loss, and we feel we're at the kind of forefront of it. But I've spoken to some of the world's experts in weight loss, and even they'll say that there's mechanisms we don't fully understand or we can't account for. I mean, your fetal environment, the body weight you were born at, your toddler environment, the amount of times you've yo-yo dieted in your life, these are all factors that will influence your outcomes at a certain point in time in your adult life when you're trying to lose weight. Yet we still look at, another 40-year-old person who is the same weight, and not we, but generally the system will give them the same plan without knowing anything about their health, their history, or their internal environment. I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about it.
What's your thoughts to basically putting your details online and getting these personalised plans for medicines to optimise your performance? You've seen stuff online, and you can subscribe and put your weight in all that bits and pieces, and then you get a plan which is supposedly suitable to you without bloods.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not going to comment specifically on certain brands or products, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. But I think it's too simplified an approach, and it's like anything. I mean, if you're focusing on the wrong thing or doing the wrong tests, or not doing those tests or profiles frequently enough, then it's not really a personalized approach.
Yeah,
it's very difficult and very labor intensive and hands-on to be personalized. But particularly, if you're scaling something, it's very hard. It's very hard to do.
One last question for you. Not the meaning of what's the meaning of life, but what's the one thing you're searching for, or really medical answer that you'd be looking for that's not really come out yet in terms of the human body or health in general? You think, I'd love to know that, or...
I think if you look at kind of a lot of what we're trying to do, it comes back to that, trying to improve people's health and lifespan, and lifespan, obviously living longer. And whilst we're getting more and more insights into aging, and we have what's called the 9 hallmarks of aging, which is everything from stem cell exhaustion, reduction in nutrient sensing, dysfunction of mitochondria, et cetera, we don't yet fully understand this kind of pre-programmed aging that happens in us. We're seeing developments whereby we're able to reprogram certain cells, and I think that's work that's going to continue to shed light further on the area. But I think we're still yet to really fully understand aging as a process.
Dr. Nas, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. So for anyone watching, listening to this podcast, it's DNA Health and Wellness Clinic. You can go and see him, get your bloods done, or one of his team there. Anything from maximizing performance, longevity. I can tell you from first hand, go and do it. It'd be probably the best half an hour you've spent with him, and you'll see huge, from my experience, improvements in your life. I think if you can do anything to get an edge, not just on your work, but also your family and your physical health, why would you not do it? There are lots of different services you have there, such as your sound healing, and I think you do recommendations for ice baths and all the other bits and pieces are all connected and linked to your physical.
It's a full lifestyle approach. And no, listen, it's great to come on, and I'm happy that you've obviously seen some benefit.
Yes.
And I think this is a great platform really to show people what's out there.
Where can people find you? Firstly online, and then physical offices. Where are you located?
Yeah, so I'm located in the clinic on Al Wassel Road, and my Instagram handle's Dr_Nas _wellness.
Amazing. Okay, and if people want to start the journey with you in terms of, I guess, jump online,
book an appointment,
and then go through the steps and go from there.
Yeah.
Dr. Nas, thank you so much for your time. We'll do it again soon. Thanks you.
Again, Carl. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy.